white light ticked something off. It started right after we started the white light up.
Wow.
That was like
insane.
I spent 3 years in the Himalaya looking for the Yeti. When I came down from that, he invited me to come to the States. You spent enough time up there. I have to say, I laughed. I'd never been to the States before. To me, America was skyscrapers and freeways. But I came over here and got into the search for Bigfoot with him. So that's when I first got into Bigfoot.
Camping deep in the wilderness can feel like an escape. But what happens when the forest decides you don't belong there? Tonight, we uncover 7 terrifying encounters where ordinary people came face to face with something massive, unseen, and impossible to explain. Stories that will make you question every shadow and sound in the woods. In this episode of Small Town Monsters, the team arrives at West Morris Mountain Campground, setting up base at Campsite 11. As the tent goes up and supplies are organized,
here in West Morris Campground, West Morris Mountain Campground. So we're in Campsite 11. Mike Green stayed in Campsite 10, but he also stayed in 11. We're gonna go ahead and set up this tent and establish our little base of operations.
they prepare for a night of exploration where strange sounds and mysterious sightings could be waiting beyond the tree line. Just beside them, Campsite 10 carries its own history. Mike Green once stayed there. Now the crew steps into those same shadows, bracing for whatever might be stirring in the woods.
My name's Mike Kirkpatrick. What got me into ultralight hiking and backpacking in general was I did a stint in the military. I was an infantryman, so a lot of hiking on the ground, but we called it rucking back then. But I guess after getting out of that, and it was a nice kind of transition into the normal world, but I can still kind of get a feel of the ruggedness and the discipline it takes to do some country.
The following morning at West Morris Campground, the team is joined by local hiker and outdoorsman Mike Kirkpatrick, who steps in as their guide for investigation. A former infantryman, Mike's military background gave him a taste for long, disciplined treks across rugged terrain, an experience he now channels into ultralight hiking and backpacking. For him, these hikes aren't just about the physical challenge.
Well, when I started coming up here, there's the pop culture Bigfoot. You see him on the bumper stickers and all that. And I, like everyone else, kind of assumed, at that point in my life, I did not think Bigfoot was real. I just enjoyed the novelty of it. Because at this point, when I started coming out here, I'd already hiked like 500 miles on the Appalachian Trail. I never saw any Bigfoot. But it was actually in 2016, I was coming up here, and what I was doing for that first year was I would come up here every weekend and go to a different spot and just hike around and explore.
They're a way to connect with the wilderness, feeling the same grit and resilience that shaped his early years while exploring the quiet, untamed corners of the countryside. At a quiet corner of the campground, an elderly couple moved with a nervous urgency, shoving their belongings into a pickup. As one of the team passed by, their eyes locked on him, sharp, wary, almost questioning. Moments later, the woman's car eased up beside Mike, the window rolling down slowly. Her voice cut through the morning stillness, low and tense. "Were you the one on the mountain last night?"
I mean, I couldn't move it, and I don't think you could move it, but if you could move that rock, you would be able to, I think you could actually get in there.
Oh, this is a different area, huh?
Different world. I mean, this is like a different environment. It's everything.
MK,
You don't want to see that.
MK, something's traveling through here.
Oh yeah,
This
I mean,
path,
this
there's
is a
something
huge
traveling
path
down
right
to this
here.
path here.
The words lingered, echoing off the trees, leaving a cold, lingering sense that the forest had witnessed something far stranger than anyone expected. As he climbed higher, he left the trail behind and stumbled upon something uncanny. A tall, carefully stacked teepee of trees, and just beyond it, a row of smaller saplings snapped at the same height, spaced like markers. The forest seemed to be leaving a deliberate, silent message. He quickly understood this wasn't just the forest making noise. That revelation sparked his Bigfoot search. Since then, he's witnessed eerie signs everywhere.
All right, so subterranean Sasquatch.
Totally
Suddenly-
plausible.
Suddenly not so,
Totally not crazy, right?
yeah, suddenly not so crazy.
But you know, if I'm 8 feet tall, this ain't nothing for me to climb out of.
Humid
And
down
I'm
here.
jacked.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
Oh
like-
no, there's people that would have no problem getting up this right now, let alone. Of course, my imagination's probably playing tricks on me, but there's worn spots on the moss.
Branches snapping with no source, distant cries echoing through the trees, stones tumbling from nowhere, and heavy knocks too close to ignore. Tension spikes as the team senses movement along the ridgeline beside them. A shadow slips through the edge of their vision, then appears again. Whispers turn urgent as the camera is raised and attention shifts uphill. Whatever it isn't stationary.
Just to watch our footing once we get out of this
Stop.
area. I think the white light ticked something off. That started right after we started the white light up.
Wow.
That was like,
Insane. That was,
it sounded like a guy groaning.
it was
Well-
man-like but bestial at the same
Yeah.
time. Oh my God.
Something is moving with purpose along the ridge, tracking just out of sight. Suddenly, an object cuts through the darkness and lands near the group. Panic flashes as lights snap on, and no one dares turn their back to the tree line. Whatever made the throw is still out there, close, unseen, and bold enough to make its presence known. The silence that follows is far more unsettling than the impact itself.
Check this out.
A little bit of air coming through there.
Yeah, you can feel air coming out of this.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So if these are the ones we're finding,
And don't forget, watch for snakes at eye level now too.
Oh God. Oh, Jesus. All right.
Take your time.
From the shadows, heavy sounds confirm movement deeper in the woods. The team leaves with more questions than answers. Something was active on Moores Mountain that night. Massive, elusive, and still unseen.
it's getting closer. MK, you feel it?
Yeah.
The question of what or who was moving in the shadows of Moores Mountain remains unanswered. But one thing is certain. The team witnessed a presence far larger and more elusive than anything they had imagined, and the forest kept its secrets well. The YouTube channel NVTV is known for its daring outdoor adventures, and this time, the creator returned to a spot in British Columbia he'd visited earlier in spring. Back then, deer stirred quietly behind him, unnoticed. Now, blanketed in snow and freezing cold, the valley felt completely different, alive with the promise of surprises only the forest could reveal. He had begun hearing the forest in a new way, beyond deer calls or bear grunts.
And there's even one spot, I videotaped it all, there's a spot where a handful of these trees were just, boom, thrown down in one stack. One tree, one of the heavier ones, was broken 1, 2, 3 times. So the top was snapped off, but it was left by a thread of bark and it was hanging. And, oh no, the top was snapped completely off and gone. And then another chunk of about 3 or 4 feet of it was broken off again and hanging by a thread of bark. And then the base of it was mulched, like psh, psh, psh. It wasn't broken clean enough for it to lay down. It was still standing, but you just grab by your fingers and go like this. And that was the one I was almost tempted to cut that off if I had a handsaw, something with me to take it home, because that was absolutely bizarre. And the strength it took to snap these trees off A human being couldn't have done it.
Noticing the rare, fleeting sounds that hinted at shifting weather or unseen movement, each whisper of the wilderness drew him further in, where the ordinary could quickly become extraordinary. A trail camera hung high in the tree, untouched, until the forest suddenly came alive.
Remember this spot? I was in this spot late spring, early summer this year, and I was standing stump back there behind me about 25 yards. I stood there, I think I had the camera a little far back, and those deer got up and were walking around directly behind me. I didn't have a clue they were there. Well, I'm at the exact same spot now, and I'm back home. I am somewhere between Squamish and Paranormal in British Columbia.
Sharp, thunderous blows struck the wood, far too forceful for a human. The air was still, yet each strike echoed with a presence unseen, powerful, and unmistakably deliberate. Something had torn through the clearing with uncanny strength. Slim trees snapped neatly at chest height, untouched by claws, teeth, or antlers. In a small, roughly 15-meter square patch, the forest lay twisted and scarred, as if an unseen force had made its presence known and vanished.
What a mass, eh? It's just really weird.
That's hard to stop.
Look at this, it's snapped twice. Snapped twice, and there's no antler marks on it. Weird, eh? Whatever, is what it is. This little group of trees looks like they're all just grabbed together like a bouquet and thrown down, eh? These ones right here. Look at that, 1, 2, 3, 4 of them in a bouquet.
The area was a scene of chaos, torn and unsettled in a way that defied explanation. Whatever had passed through left no clear trace, yet the damage spoke volumes. It was strange, unsettling, impossible to ignore, and left a lingering sense that something unusual had been here. The forest looked ravaged, as if something had carved through with raw, unstoppable power. Trees were stripped and shredded, bark flaked and gouged, leaving deep, jagged scars.
I don't know, another week and a bit, I'm really going to start picking up. I'll probably be hunting every single day in the mountains. But in the meantime, I'm going to explain to you guys and show you guys the video I took on that last trip. I think I discussed it in the previous video, not the hunting videos, the moose videos. But I explained to everybody how when you are in the woods hunting, like myself and thousands of other people just like me.
The scene radiated force and intent, a chaotic signature that hinted at a presence both massive and unseen. He knew it wasn't any ordinary animal or human. Whatever had moved through this dense patch of trees left a mark that was unmistakable and impossible to explain.
But that little branch I balanced in there to keep it on an angle, pointing down, that stick should not have stayed behind that camera when it was spun around, if it was done by antlers. Whatever, it wasn't done by a bear, there's no teeth marks on it, there's no claw marks in the tree, nothing we'll lose sleep about, right? So I moved the camera, replenished the batteries, and then we went on a big, long, deep timber hunt not too far from the Peace River.
The damage was old, yet the towering grass and thick undergrowth only hinted at the magnitude of what had passed through, a force both powerful and unseen. A massive tree had been ripped from the earth, its top 16 feet broken and tossed over 40 feet across the trail.
And then we carried on, went down the trail, got to where the trail camera was, and the trail camera, which is set on a tree, I put a stick behind it all the time. It was spun right around, about a quarter of the way around the tree to face the next tree beside it, which was only 2 feet away in a trunk like that. And we were the only ones in there since the camera had been set. And I'm like, well, that sucks. You know, there was 2 or 3 videos of myself on there.
The destruction hinted at a staggering force, raw, deliberate, and utterly otherworldly, leaving the forest trembling in its wake. What kind of force could move through the forest with such unimaginable power, snapping trees and shredding the undergrowth, yet leave no trace of itself, vanishing as mysteriously as it appeared? On Flash of Beauty, Bigfoot revealed viewers dive into the life of Peter Byrne, whose fascination with Bigfoot spans over 6 decades. Born in Ireland, Byrne's journey took him far from home, driven by a passion for uncovering the unknown. In the 1950s, a connection with a pioneering Texan researcher set him on a path from North American forests to the Himalayas, establishing him as one of the most enduring figures in Bigfoot research.
1956, with correspondence with a Texan whose name was Tom Slick, and he was very interested in projecting a full-time research in the Himalaya. I am Irish. I grew up in Ireland.
In the jagged Himalayas, Byrne encountered Tom Slick, a fearless Texan obsessed with the Yeti. Together, they pursued fleeting shadows and ancient legends across frozen ridges and hidden valleys for 3 years.
Was trekking in the Himalaya, a small expedition to look for the Yeti, and made contact with this Texan called Tom Slick, this oil man. He became a very good friend. And he wanted to do a full-time search for the Yeti in the Himalaya, 3 years.
Upon returning, Slick suggested Byrne cross the ocean to America to seek the equally elusive Bigfoot. Byrne had never been to the States, but the call of untamed forests and hidden mysteries was irresistible.
So to make a long story short, I signed up with him. I spent 3 years in the Himalaya looking for the Yeti. When I came down from that, he invited me to come to the States. He said, you spent enough time up there, come to the States and look for Bigfoot. And I have to say, I laughed. I'd never been to the States before. To me, America was skyscrapers and freeways. But I came over here and got into the search for Bigfoot with him.
In the jagged Himalayas, Byrne encountered Tom Slick, a fearless Texan obsessed with the Yeti. Together, they pursued fleeting shadows and ancient legends across frozen ridges and hidden valleys for 3 years. Upon returning, Slick suggested Byrne cross the ocean to America to seek the equally elusive Bigfoot.
When I was big game hunting, partially in North India, but mostly in southern Nepal, the jungles of southern Nepal, which run for 500 miles east to west, 50 miles north to south. There were elephant everywhere, lots of elephant. We did not shoot elephant. So that's when I first got into Bigfoot. And that was 1956, 57, 58, 59 was the Yeti, and then Bigfoot, January 1960, starting here.
Byrne had never been to the States, but the call of untamed forests and hidden mysteries was irresistible. After his Himalayan expeditions, Peter Byrne set up a Bigfoot research hub in northern Oregon, a modest trailer beside a local restaurant that quickly became a magnet for stories. Visitors shared sightings, curious and cautious, while Byrne documented the most credible accounts.
In that part of Asia, the elephant is one of the Hindu gods, a holy animal. Nobody ever shot an elephant. The other animal which was protected was the rhino, which is kind of the preserves of the royal family of Nepal. So those 2 animals we didn't shoot, but everything else was trophies. My clients would contact me and tell me what they wanted, usually tiger, and then a leopard, and a buffalo, and then a bison and so on. And I would set up the arrangement before they came.
When the project moved to Hood River, the work continued, turning casual encounters into a trove of mysterious, first-hand reports. Even a small outpost, it seemed, could unlock extraordinary secrets. Across decades of searching, he had found only 6 sets of footprints, and never the creature itself. Yet through countless interviews with credible witnesses, he gathered a rich collection of encounters. For him, the proof lay in the stories, not just the sightings.
That were credible out of that, and those are in my book. I recorded them. So that was the purpose of the information center. It worked quite well. Well, certain things I learned as a big game hunter were useful, and one was sign reading on the ground, so that when I got back into bigfooting, we'd see something, I could look at it. I learned tracking and sign reading.
Witnesses reported a colossal figure, over 7 feet tall, dark brown, moving with an uncanny upright stride. It stopped suddenly, locked eyes on them, and for a heartbeat, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then, as silently as it appeared, it turned and vanished into the shadows. In the world of Bigfoot research, he welcomed skeptics, yet few truly understood the field.
So the thing walked up to about 200 yards away, stopped, looked at them, turned and walked away. They said it was 7 feet tall at least, 400 to 450 pounds, enormous, dark brown in color, swinging its arms, walking upright, and when it stopped like this with its hands out, looked at them, turned and walked away. So the sighting is extremely unusual in that the time of the day, the people, we believe these things are nocturnal and lie up during the day. So my theory there is that the noise of the machinery got it up and moving, and it didn't know where the noise is coming from, which happens with wild animals very often. They can't pinpoint sound.
Those who studied carefully sometimes became convinced the legend was real. Over decades, only a handful of scientists accepted it, but Byrne remained at the edge of doubt and belief, chasing a mystery that refused to be dismissed. After decades of searching, footprints tracked, and witnesses interviewed, could Bigfoot be closer than we think? And what would you do if you came face to face with it? On Travel Channel, viewers witnessed the stories of those who have encountered the unexplained. Amber Brooks, an avid hiker and outdoor enthusiast, never imagined she'd come face to face with something unworldly. One night, while driving along a remote road, she saw a figure standing at the roadside. When her headlights hit it, the creature ran with incredible speed, tall, muscular, and covered in long, scraggly hair. The terrifying encounter left Amber shaken, forever changing her belief in the unknown.
I had saw something standing off the right-hand side of the road. I turn on my brights, and it took off running to the right off the side of the road, and it was running full pace like a man. It was very tall. The hair was long and scraggly. You could almost see the muscles in its legs as it ran away. I was terrified, shaking, crying. When I got home, I was in full-blown panic. I didn't believe in Bigfoot until I had my own personal experience.
Ken Genhard, a seasoned cryptologist, and commentator Dryack Hayes have often shared their thoughts on Bigfoot, painting a picture of a creature both awe-inspiring and terrifying. Standing 7 to 10 feet tall with massive feet that gave it its name, Bigfoot walks upright like a human, but radiates raw primal power. Thick, shaggy hair covers a muscular frame, giving it an almost otherworldly presence in the wilderness. For Genhard and Hayes, Bigfoot isn't just legend.
On the one hand, you have something that looks very human-like. It walks upright like us, but it also displays some very brutish and bestial characteristics, being hair-covered, being very powerful. Bigfoot is really the rock star of cryptozoology.
It's a living mystery that challenges our understanding of what might really be out there. Bigfoot isn't just a story whispered in the woods, it's a force that has crept into every corner of our culture.
Bigfoot has really captured our imagination as a society, but there's also this pop culture level where Bigfoot has simply taken over the airwaves.
Whether it's movies, TV shows, commercials, you name it, people will sell it if it's Bigfoot.
As an iconic figure in pop culture, Bigfoot has also become big business. There are a number of toys, products, there's a pizza named after him, there's beef jerky. We're literally inundated with Bigfoot in our everyday lives.
From blockbuster movies to late-night TV and viral ads, its presence looms everywhere. Yet behind the headlines and screens, the real question lingers. How much of this legend is truly out there, watching?
While there are reports of Bigfoot all across the United States, there's absolutely no doubt that the vast majority of the reports come from the Pacific Northwest. If you look at the terrain, it's filled with mountains, vast forests that just go on for thousands of square miles. Now, if Bigfoot exists, which I believe it does, then the best places for these creatures to exist in a fashion that would not see them by us would be in the deep forests and in the mountains.
Some experts believe Bigfoot may be smarter than anyone imagined. It doesn't just hide in the shadows, it erases its presence entirely. Tracks vanish, traces are buried, even its could be concealed. To encounter it is to face a creature that seems determined to remain a ghost in the wilderness, forever out of reach. On remote logging roads under construction, giant human-like footprints began appearing, catching workers completely off guard. One man, Jerry Crew, took action, carefully pouring plaster into one of the prints, preserving an eerie record of a creature that seemed almost too incredible to exist.
Giant human-like footprints were being found on logging roads that were being built by the construction workers. One gentleman named Jerry Crew actually had the wherewithal to pour plaster into one of these footprints and make a cast.
The cast would go on to fuel legends and questions that still haunt the forests today. In 1958, giant human-like footprints appeared on logging roads, capturing the attention of tractor driver Jerry Crew.
Tracks like this one were found in 1958. Jerry Crew, he was a tractor driver, brought them down to the newspaper, the Humboldt Times.
And when he took that to the Humboldt Times newspaper offices, a newspaper editor named Andrew Gonzoli published a photo of him holding this giant human-like footprint and also coined the name Bigfoot. So in essence, that's where the name Bigfoot came from.
Recognizing their unusual size, Crew carefully made a plaster cast and brought it to the Humboldt Times. There, editor Andrew Gonoy published a striking photo of Crew holding the enormous print, and in that moment, he gave the creature its name, Bigfoot. That single image sent shockwaves through the public imagination, turning a mysterious footprint into a legend that still fascinates the world today.
I think they have heightened senses, that they're actually able to sense, to hear, to see on a level above us. And so therefore, they are essentially able to move out of an area quickly when we enter it. They've adapted behavior patterns specifically to avoid us, humans.
Some cryptozoologists claim that Bigfoot, in order to evade capture or detection, will bury its scat, hide its tracks, or even bury its dead. These attributes, if they're true, could make it nearly impossible to detect a creature.
Long before the name Bigfoot became legendary, the creature was called Sasquatch, then Sasquatch. Ronnie shares his insight, suggesting that such tales don't exist by accident. Somewhere in the depths of the forest, it moves unseen, powerful, untamed, and always just beyond the edge of human perception. Each shadow, each rumor, each fleeting trace keeps the legend alive.
One of the things that's most convincing being out here in Willow Creek is the people who come by and report Bigfoot. When you speak with someone who's actually had an experience, I mean, they believe they've seen this thing. They're not all liars. They're not all crazy people.
Daring those who hear it to question what might truly be lurking in the wilderness. So, with eyewitnesses, cryptologists, and footprints that vanish as if by magic, the question remains.
And Bigfoot is the name that we all kind of know, we all recognize, but they are one and the same.
As a folklorist, I go back to the idea that legends do not exist for no reason. Bigfoot speaks to a lot of truths, and it is worthwhile to consider what those truths are.
How much of Bigfoot's legend is simply stories, and how much is something still out there, watching us from the shadows? Meet Sarah, the adventurer behind Salish Sasquatch, a channel dedicated to sharing evidence and encounters with the elusive Bigfoot. In her videos, she explores the dense forests of Washington state, uncovering strange sounds, mysterious footprints, and chilling sightings.
My heart was pounding like really bad, and I didn't know what it was going on. At one point, I could hear something walking through the brush, footsteps, crack, 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 as it was passing trees.
But a ride through Morton with mini bikes and her guide Stephen Marcus would soon show her that in these woods, you are never truly alone.
Welcome to Sailor Sasquatch, where we share evidence as well as encounters. Today we are in Morton, Washington. This area is very well known in the Bigfoot community in Washington State for Sasquatch activity. We had a video with our friend Scott Taylor titled The Night Watchman. I'm going to link that down below. That's a very well-known account about two people that were hired to watch over logging equipment here on this hill, and they had a lot of activity transpire. So I'm going to link that below. We are going to be riding in on mini bikes with our friend Stephen Marcus today, and we are going to take you along for the ride and tell you about an encounter that happened in March of 2022.
It was March 26th when Jonathan and a dozen friends gathered for a night at the old quarry. Two trailers formed a silent shape in the darkness, while the fire cast dancing shadows across the clearing. Laughter and chatter filled the air as everyone settled in.
And I'm thinking, okay, well, I'll go along with it. We'll see what's happening here. But at the same time, I was kind of confused because all these men, grown men, who I knew, some of these guys were track specialists who follow footprints. You got people here who understand the trees and the woods and the sounds and all the different things, all these different experts at their fields out here.
But as Jonathan moved through the group, talking and joking, one camper sitting off to the side would soon witness that the night held secrets no one could have imagined. Out of nowhere, a sharp clatter rang across the road. Jonathan and his friend stiffened, aware of the sound that didn't reach the others, whose presence was muffled by the trailer.
After the gentleman that I was sitting by that it made me aware of the rock clacking, he goes down the road, as I was saying, and then he radios over and he goes, "Jonathan, come down this way. There's at least 2 Sasquatches down by the creek." And so I'm scurrying to go get my phone because it was charging at the time and everybody else is getting their stuff. And when I start walking down the road right here, that's when there's these 2 power knocks. I mean, it sounded like, they were so loud, it sounded like 2 gunshots, but it wasn't gunshots. It was just...
For tense minutes, the knocking echoed through the darkness, as if something hidden was deliberately announcing itself. Suddenly, something began moving toward the group. One of Jonathan's friends froze, panic flooding through him as a cold dread gripped everyone.
So I'm not 100% positive where the Sasquatch was last seen through the thermal, but I remember seeing guys down here by the creek, and from the version that I had heard was that when the guy was like, "Oh, I'm gonna run after him and try to film him," that they were both running in this direction, kind of parallel to the creek. And I was also told by some of the guys that were watching the monitor that the guy who's chasing him, he's falling all over the place. They could see that through thermal.
No one knew where to look, who to follow, or what was out there. Just the terrifying possibility that something massive and unseen was watching, closing in and waiting.
Crawling, and I could see him, I could see the fern starting to move, and he's starting to come down, not straight across, he's starting to come down at an angle, and he's starting to go back this direction. And as he's coming by, I see the guy who was first chasing the Bigfoot. I don't know when it happened, but he had gotten ahead of me and he's come back this way. And I told him, I said, "Hey, he's moving right up there." And he goes, "Yeah, okay, sure." And I thought, okay, well, I don't know who these guys are anyway, so whatever.
From the drone above, the figure became unmistakable. Beside a tree, only part of it was visible. The left side and back revealed at a slight angle. A massive arm hung unnaturally, bent and resting. The torso was enormous, broad and powerfully built, its proportions eerily uniform.
I see it's going down this direction, and it's only about, as I'm coming up this way, I get up to, by the time I get up to just about to the gate again, I see Steve walking down, and it's coming across right by Steve. And I go, "Did you see that? Did you see that?" And he goes, "Yeah, I know, I can't believe we saw that." And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe we both saw this thing. Is it real? And we were just all excited because we didn't know what to do at that point. Then we went back into camp.
It dominated the space like a solid, towering object placed upright beside the tree. The size difference was jaw-dropping, unlike anything he'd ever seen. His first encounter left him in a surreal daze, unsure what was real, yet unable to look away. What he witnessed was extraordinary, something few could ever imagine. Just after dawn, he was stirred from sleep by a sudden series of sharp snaps echoing through the trees. At first faint, the sounds quickly multiplied, surrounding him.
And I was so excited. This was my very first experience and introduction to collecting audio for Sasquatch activity. So anyways, I turned it on, and everyone was telling me I have to use it. So I finally used it. I turned it on, went to bed around 2 o'clock in the morning, and I had it in the top of my tent. And about 6:30, I think, in the morning, I got woken up, and I start hearing something cracking on a tree.
Hidden in his sleeping bag, he felt a creeping unease. Something was moving just beyond the shadows, watching from the woods behind him. On the recording, it's faint, but in person, the sound was unmistakable, loud, strange, and impossible to ignore.
As I'm laying there in my sleeping bag, I can hear sounds going off behind me. I can hear sounds going off in front of me, towards the direction of my feet, that way in the woods, and then over to the right. It was like a perfect triangle, and we could hear them coming from different directions. And, fortunately, I caught this all on my audio. It's not great, but it's there, and you can kind of hear it. And at one point, we're listening to this, and I'm Marcus is sleeping. He finally wakes up, and I'm like thinking I'm the only one hearing this.
It was his real encounter with anything Sasquatch related, something he had never heard in all his years in the woods. After everything they saw and heard that night, the question remains: how close did they really come to something no one is meant to encounter? Meet Angelo, the explorer behind the popular YouTube channel Exploring with Angelo. In his videos, he takes viewers on daring journeys through forests, mountains, and hidden corners of the wilderness, sharing his curiosity and love for adventure. But a return to a familiar spot, just a few nights after his last visit, would soon remind him that even the most known places can hold unexpected surprises.
A few nights ago, I actually had to take a little bit of time off just because I'm getting ready to go on the next big adventure. We're heading to British Columbia as of tomorrow. So, with that being said, I figured I'd come out, still get some content, but I wanted to lighten the load for myself. I'm not going to be actually staying out here the entire night, but we are going to get in there and we're going to camp. I'm going to explain a little bit about this place. So we were here a few nights ago. Reason why is because this is part of the Whispering Women Woods, which it is haunted, and there is something going on. I think there might actually be a Bigfoot out here.
Whispers of something unusual in the woods have been circulating lately. Witnesses spoke of enormous tracks, far too big for any ordinary creature.
We ended up going to the Skinwalker Forest instead. Reason why I ended up going there was because when we went to the other side of this forest, there must have been a house or something like really close by, and they were just blasting music. I'm like, man, not again. This is why you shouldn't film on a Friday night, apparently.
And a fleeting glimpse of a shadowy figure that seemed almost otherworldly. The precise location remains a mystery, but the story has left the forest feeling a little darker, a little stranger than before. A sudden sound broke the silence, some movement, almost as if something had shifted right nearby.
It's like something scraping on like a tree. Okay, we gotta go down there. There's definitely something moving down there. It sounded as if something was scraping up on a tree or something. Which, I mean, some animals do that. Like, I know deer do that periodically.
At first, nothing could be seen, and it was easy to wonder if it was just a stray branch or something else entirely. Something shifted in the darkness, just beyond sight, its movements strange and deliberate. For a moment, it was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, and every shadow seemed alive. Whatever it wasn't anything familiar, and it was closer than anyone dared to admit.
So something just hit the tree.
Devastation.
Devastation. Is the tree collapsing?
Stay for longer.
Okay. Unfortunately, I can't stay all night, but I'll stay as late as I can.
From the pit.
From the pit? What do you mean, from the pit?
An apple vanished without a trace, disappearing from its spot on the pack, as if by unseen hands. The other remained untouched, but the half-eaten one was gone. Then movement flickered at the edge of the clearing. Something had taken it.
There's no way. There's no animal that I could think that would even be able to reach that. Like, look at how high off the ground that is. You'd have to have someone like human size or taller. It's like... Yeah, dude, it's like stabbed in there. What the f***?
Whatever it wasn't human, and it had left only questions in its wake. What first appeared to be a harmless movement suddenly turned violent. Something struck the camera without warning, sharp and deliberate, as if the forest itself had reached out. Moments later, the sense of being watched became undeniable. Objects weren't just falling, they were being thrown.
So, I'm gonna be real with you guys. I think something was just thrown, like several things. I can't quite tell though. I don't see any like rocks or anything. Unless like there's a whole bunch of shit falling off the tree. I don't know what the hell that was. But I did hear like a whoosh at some point. And it sounded as if something was just thrown, but I don't see anything that would have done that.
Whatever was out there had made its presence known. A low, guttural sound echoed from somewhere beyond the trees, deep, unfamiliar, and impossible to place. The forest fell quiet again, leaving only uncertainty behind. For a brief moment, something seemed to move in the shadows, though it was gone as quickly as it appeared. Whether it was a trick of the light or something far more disturbing, the presence lingered, heavy and unresolved. Something had passed through the area, something with enough strength and height to disturb objects well above the ground.
Oh, man, what the? Something literally just hit the camera. What the was that?
Presence.
Hang on, I gotta... Yeah, that clearly is a presence of something. Alright, something really strange is going on in these woods. Maybe Bigfoot does not like the fact that I'm here. Especially at night.
The arrangement of the wood made no sense, and no trail continued beyond it. Whatever caused it couldn't be explained by any known animal. The reach alone suggested a presence far larger than expected, leaving behind a scene that defied logic and raised far more questions than answers. After everything that had been heard and witnessed, doubt was no longer an option. What began as curiosity had slowly transformed into conviction.
Okay, that's just something, a frog or something jumping in the bush. So, the upcoming trip. So we are heading to Western Canada. Yes, I did bring a beer with me. Just one. Oh, it's ice cold too. That is refreshing. But, yeah, so we're going to Western Canada. We're going to be doing a lot of British Columbia. We're going to be doing some areas of British Columbia that are... People don't normally go there. We are going out into the wilderness. We're going to do tons of camping. I pretty much got everything we need in order to survive.
Too many sounds, too many unexplained moments to ignore. Whatever was out there demanded answers. The search wouldn't end here. It would continue deeper into remote regions, from northern forests to the vast wilderness of British Columbia, until the truth finally revealed itself. When the evidence no longer fits any known explanation, do we question the story or the limits of what we believe is possible? In the remote wilderness of Alaska, a child named Osh would later recount a moment that changed how his family viewed the forest forever. While out early one morning, the stillness was shattered by terrifying screams echoing from different directions. Frozen, Osh turned toward the sound and came face to face with a massive figure standing motionless, staring back at him. For a boy raised around wildlife, this was no ordinary encounter.
Early one morning by myself, and as soon as I turned around, I heard these loud screams coming in 3 directions, and I just froze. And I turned, and there was about this 8-foot creature standing there just staring at me. And I froze up. I looked right in its eyes.
His account would later be featured on Animal Planet, raising a chilling question. What kind of presence watches from the edges of the wild? He stood locked in place, staring into eyes that felt unnaturally aware. Overwhelmed by fear, he dropped his gaze and shut his eyes, hoping it would end.
And I put my head straight down and I closed my eyes. And about a good 3 minutes later, I hear just thump, thump, thump. And I open my eyes and I look up and I could just see trees just clearing, although the screams were still going on from the other creatures.
It was walking away from you?
Yeah.
It's hard for me to imagine the kind of fear that Osh probably had in him at that point, but I could see it on his face. It was very clear. He was unnerved.
Moments later, heavy impacts moved through the forest. Branches snapped. Trees were forced aside as something massive retreated. Yet the haunting cries continued from elsewhere in the woods, suggesting he had never been alone. In that moment, his mind went blank, overwhelmed by the feeling that this encounter might be the last of his life. For a young boy barely into his teens, he stood alone in the wilderness, holding a small hunting rifle that suddenly felt useless.
It was just a flashback of my life. I honestly thought I was gonna die. It was bad.
You gotta imagine there was this 12-year-old boy out there, you know, the little deer rifle, and all of a sudden here's this 8-foot, 800-pound, whatever, just some gigantic, huge monster growling at him. And he just went into shock. What do you think you saw?
Guess I saw Sasquatch.
What charged toward him was enormous, far heavier and more powerful than anything he could comprehend. The shock froze his body, stripping away the ability to react. Even now, he struggles to explain what he faced that day, knowing only that it was something far beyond his understanding. From roughly 30 feet away, investigators later recreated the sighting. Using a raised marker, they estimated where the top of the figure's head would have reached. The result was staggering nearly 9 feet tall. Such a size ruled out known wildlife in the region and aligned with massive tracks previously documented nearby.
Now, the mind plays tricks on you, especially in a moment of complete fear, but I really believe this kid saw something.
If you pointed out here, how close would you say it was when you first saw it?
Probably 20, 25 feet, probably to that tree right there.
I'm kind of interested though to see how big this was. I'm gonna go stand over by between those 2 trees for size comparison. You tell me when to stop when you think about how close it was to you.
Okay.
And I'll stop, and then you can kind of say how big you think it was compared to me.
Okay.
The connection was unsettling. The investigators acknowledged the courage it took for Osh to share his experience, recognizing the fear he faced that day. To them, there was no doubt his encounter was real and deeply significant. As the light began to fade and the forest grew quieter, they expressed their gratitude and asked him to guide them safely back before darkness settled in.
I was interested to see the size of the creature that Osh encountered, so we put Bobo off at a fair distance. Actually, Osh stopped him when he said, yeah, it's about that far away.
You know, we're about 30 feet apart right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna raise this stick up, and you tell me when you think the top of the stick is that where the top of its head was.
Okay. Say about right there.
So that's about 9 foot.
We found that the creature was probably about 8.5 or 9 feet tall. That puts it squarely in the realm of the average adult male Sasquatch.
In a place where something unknown had already revealed itself once, no one was eager to remain after nightfall. And as the forest grew silent once more, a chilling thought remained. How many unseen eyes still linger in the shadows, quietly tracking those who dare to enter? On Salish Sasquatch, the forests of the Pacific Northwest don't just hide legends, they test those brave enough to enter. A group of veterans, hardened by experiences most could never imagine, returned to the wilds near Golden, Washington, drawn by a road that locals dare not travel after dark. They set out to camp on secluded private property, but the forest had other plans. Farther up the road, an encounter awaited, something that shook even those trained to face danger. Tonight, Salish Sasquatch retraces their steps to show exactly where the shadows of the forest came alive and why some mysteries refuse to stay buried.
Right outside Goldendale, Washington. Where we're going to be camping is up this road up here on some private property, but where I had my encounter is up this road, and I'll show you this later. We're on private property. We're going to go up here to the southern edge of the Yakima Indian Reservation. We are half a mile south of where I seen my first two.
And we're gonna go there tomorrow morning and we're gonna film that encounter. That's one of my favorite Bigfoot stories. It was in our Bumping Lake documentary, but we're on location, so the story's gonna be a lot better this time.
The team pressed Virgil for answers. Where exactly were they going? He led them up the hill, winding deeper into the shadowed forest, another 2 miles from safety, and into the unknown. This wasn't just any hike, it was the exact spot of Virgil's very first sighting, an encounter that had haunted him ever since. Every step closer, the tension grew. The forest seemed to watch, the silence thick with secrets. Tonight, the team would retrace his path, approaching the spot where the impossible once appeared, to see if the shadows would reveal themselves once again.
Where are we going, Virgil?
We're going to be going up here on top of the hill about another 2 miles or so. This is my first sighting that I ever had, right here. I'm going to take you to that spot and show it to you.
When he, the witness, first told the story, no one could imagine the intensity of what happened. But now, the team was standing right where it unfolded. Before them stretched the vast 250-acre clear-cut he had described, now grown over, but once freshly logged and eerily empty. This was the first landing, where he had parked, gathered his gear, and stepped into the darkness. The road ahead, where he had walked alone that night, still held the echoes of the encounter, waiting to be retraced. Every shadow, every whisper of the forest seemed to hint something was still watching.
When I told you that story the first time, about my encounter, this is right where it happened, right here. And so when I said there was about a 250-acre clear cut off to my left, that's this. It's grown up quite a bit since it's been all replanted, but this had been logged, and this is the first landing right here, and this is where I parked. Got all my stuff, got out, and this is the road that I walked up right here in the dark.
The hillside stretched before them, dark and silent, but it wasn't empty. He had been here before, right where the encounter happened, and the memory still hung in the air like a warning. Mount Adams led the way, flashlight cutting through the shadows, every step bringing them closer to the spot where the impossible had appeared. Suddenly, a movement, something slipping between the trees, made them stop cold. The forest seemed to close in, every sound amplified, every shadow alive. They were standing on the same ground, retracing steps that had once terrified him. And tonight, the hillside was ready to reveal its secrets again.
Right here, this was the hillside. It happened right down over the hill right here. So that was the hillside that he was looking up right here. And hollering up on the hill. So, and then right here, let me back up just a second. There's Mount Adams. And that's the way they were heading, right there.
So let's go up.
Okay.
This is quite steep. It doesn't look it, but this is very, very steep.
Yeah, this road wasn't even here. This is a skid road, something logging road. This was all, but it was just right over here. That meadow was right here.
He thought it was just other hunters at first. Turkey hunting had brought him up this quiet hill, and when he saw movement in the trees, his first instinct was to head down and tell them to leave. No one else was supposed to be here. But then, he noticed something strange. The movement wasn't random. It glided from left to right through the thick scrub, deliberate and eerily silent. He froze, heart racing, as the figure slowly emerged. Short, scrappy, moving effortlessly under the low branches. Then, it reached the edge of the meadow. Only 2 feet from him, it stood upright. The forest seemed to hold its breath. He realized at that moment, this wasn't a hunter. This wasn't anything he had ever imagined. Something alive, something intelligent, something that didn't belong, was watching him.
As I was sitting there, I actually thought it was I was turkey hunting, and I thought it was other hunters up here. So I was going to go down there and tell them to leave because they're not even supposed to be here. So as I was sitting there, I noticed movement coming out from my left to the right through these trees. I could just see movement coming through. So as I'm sitting there watching, this thing came out and it was low scrub. You can see how it's kind of short, you know, it's kind of scrubby. So this thing came out and it ducked under these trees and it stood up on the edge of the meadow, and it was only out about 2 feet. So as I'm looking at it, I thought it was a hunter at first, and then I thought, no, it looks like a guy in a ghillie suit. And I thought, no. And I thought, well, what is this, a bear? And I was like, no, because it was too tall. And I was like, oh my God, this is what my grandfathers were talking about. This is a freaking Bigfoot right here. So
at first, he thought it was a bear, but something didn't add up. It was too tall, too different. His heart raced as realization hit him like a punch. This was exactly what his grandfathers had warned him about. A Bigfoot, right there, standing in the clearing. Panic surged. His hand instinctively reached for his shotgun, but then he stopped. Every muscle tensed, every breath careful, as he froze in place, staring at the impossible. For a moment, time seemed to stretch. The forest was silent, watching, and he knew one thing: nothing could have prepared him for this.
So then I started to panic, and I was reaching for my shotgun, and I thought, no, don't grab your gun. Just sit here, don't move, don't move, don't move. Just stay here. So when it came out, it was looking north. Okay, I was looking west towards Mount Adams, and this hillside is what he was looking up on right here. He was facing that way and looking up on that hillside right here. You can see that hill over there. And then it did a murr with a chirp, like he was trying to mimic an animal of some type. Just a murr chirp. I can't do what it did, but it did it 3 times up on this hillside. And then it ducked. It only stood there for about a minute. It wasn't out very long. And then it ducked down and went back exactly the way that it came out. And I could see it moving back over to where it came from. And it was gone for about, I'd say about 2 minutes. I think this whole thing lasted for about 7 minutes, but I only seen him for about 3 at the most.
He waited just long enough to give them space, then grabbed his gear and made his way back up the hill. Crossing the creek, moving through the intersection, every step felt heavier as the forest seemed to watch him, leaving the hillside and whatever had been there behind. But even as the engine faded into the distance, one thing was clear: the forest didn't give up its secrets easily, and that encounter would stay with him forever.
Just giving them time to get out of the way or go wherever they were going, and then I grabbed my stuff and I pretty much went right back up the hill, crossed the creek, come down this intersection, got my truck, and I left.
This is J.C. Johnson, and today the forest's secrets are about to be revealed. 3 separate times in broad daylight, Alexa came face to face with a creature most say doesn't exist: a Sasquatch. Dr. Christopher, curious and skeptical, asked Alex exactly what he saw, and the answers were shocking. No shadows, no tricks of the light, just raw, unexplainable encounters that might be the clearest proof yet the legends are real. Watch closely. Each sighting is more chilling than the last. Alexa was riding a small Polaris through the woods, letting her dog Zor run ahead. Suddenly, every dog on the hill came charging down, barking and whimpering like something had terrified them. Then she saw it, something massive, motionless, standing behind a towering tree. Her heart pounded. The dogs froze, then bolted. Zor disappeared. Until Alexa looked ahead. 8 feet away, her dog stood frozen, and behind her, 3 enormous hair-covered figures loomed silently. What had Alexa stumbled into? And could she make it out alive?
We have a Polaris, it's like a little electric four-wheeler that I was driving around, and I was running my dog Zor, and he was running all over the place as usual, and I thought he was in front of me, but then all of a sudden all the dogs came running down from the hill, and then whatever was in front of me was still right there behind the really big tall tree. And I was really shocked because I didn't know what it was. It kept moving, and all of a sudden it stopped, and then I kept driving without thinking, and finally the dogs, one of my sister's dogs and my other dog, they just stopped in front of me, and it made me stop the Polaris, and they sat there, they looked, and they started whimpering, and they just ran off. And then I was looking for Zor, and I couldn't find him, and then all of a sudden I looked further up, and there he was, like 8 feet in front of me with these 3.
She spoke in whispers about the giants she had seen. The tallest, Rufus, 12 feet or more, a shadow looming impossibly over the forest. The smallest, 8 feet tall, moved with a reddish hue, like the strange hair sometimes clinging to sheds. Between them was another, darker, bridging the gap between ordinary and unimaginable. And the largest, darker than anything else, towering in the daylight like a living shadow. The forest had hidden them for ages, until now they were revealed.
How tall was the biggest one, do you think?
12 foot, I
Maybe
believe.
12 feet?
12 feet or bigger.
Yeah, and that would be Rufus. We've got his pictures.
What about the smallest one?
The smallest one's a reddish color.
He was about how tall?
8 feet.
8 feet. So the smallest one was reddish in color, kind of like the hair found stuck on your shed.
Yeah, the hair.
And then there was one that was intermediate in color.
Yeah, it was like a darkish color. It was sort of like the same color as
like
the
a
biggest
10-foot one, and then the 12-foot or larger one was much darker.
Yeah, it was a lot more darker.
At first, it looked like a gorilla, but then Alex noticed the human features, impossible to ignore. Its nose, squished like a gorilla's yet structured, was hauntingly familiar. And the eyes. The youngest were close together, almost innocent. The largest, the giant, had eyes set wide, piercing, intelligent, chillingly aware. It wasn't just a beast, it was something in between, blurring the line between man and monster, staring from the shadows, daring anyone to come closer.
I wouldn't say it looks like a gorilla, but it has some human features to it.
What features would you call human?
There's part of their nose is like kind of like it's squished up like a gorilla, but it has some type of structure to it.
Okay, so it still sticks out, but is it broad or narrow?
It's narrow.
It's fairly narrow?
Yes.
Okay. What about their eyes? Were they close together, far apart?
It varied. Like the youngest one, eyes were close together. The biggest one was a little bit further apart than usual.
Its face was a dark, almost shadowy brown, staring with an unsettling awareness. But the rest of its body, covered in reddish hair, glowing strangely in the daylight. The contrast was eerie, unnatural, as if the forest had stitched together something both familiar and impossible. Every inch of it radiated power, mystery, and something that felt deeply alive.
His face clearly.
So what color was his face?
Like a darkish color.
Darkish brownish?
Darkish brownish, yeah.
So he had a darkish brownish face, but the rest of his body was colored with the reddish hair.
Yeah.
It had happened 3 times before, but now Alexa faced the source herself. 8 feet away, the creatures towered over her, unmoving, watching. She stared at them for what felt like an eternity. Her hands turned white from gripping the Polaris, her body frozen in shock. Every instinct, every thought, every word, gone. She couldn't scream. She couldn't move. She simply froze, trapped in a moment where the forest revealed its darkest secret, and she was powerless to escape.
Yeah.
How many times do you think that happened?
That happened about like 3 different times.
How long were you staring at them, and then what caused you to turn around and head back?
I stared at them for like about 2 minutes at the most, and then my hands were starting to turn white. I was really squinching the steering wheel of the Polaris because they're a lot more bigger than me, obviously, and I didn't know what to do, and I just stood there like kind of shocked, just staring at them because they were 8 feet in front of me, and I was just blinking my eyes, like I was shocked.
Yeah.
And I forgot everything, all my motor skills and everything. I couldn't even talk. I couldn't even let out a squeal. I just like froze.
The event may have ended for the day, but the story wasn't over. Something had been revealed, and something was still waiting. The forest didn't give up its mysteries easily, and neither would the truth about what lurked within it. And as the last footsteps fade back into the trees, one unsettling thought remains. These encounters didn't happen in stories, they happened to real people. So the next time the forest goes quiet around you, ask yourself, are you truly alone, or has something decided to watch you from the darkness?